Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you so much again for joining me here. I hope you're having a fantastic day. We're taking a quick look here at Bitcoin, double checking a few things, such as Fear and Greed Index pulling back pretty significant. Altcoin Season Index also holding fairly strong, which seems odd because altcoins pulled back a lot, but there's a lot of money flowing into stablecoins, kind of shifting that momentum here. We'll talk about that as well. The important thing I think is to stick around to watch to make sure you understand the CME gaps that are filling here, or sorry, not filling, they are forming rather, and they could get filled here soon, specifically with Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana as well. So we're going to talk about that. The other things to discuss too here is, of course, the pretty obvious resistances that are soon to be retested here, or hopefully retested, so we can consider shorting on Ethereum, SUI, and Solana, right? So all three of them have pretty significant resistance ranges above the price action, even including XRP at 3. So we're going to talk about those things here as well and kind of just discuss best practice for situations like this, because a lot of folks, I got tons of DMs after my message, my video from yesterday. And everybody's kind of curious, how do you properly adjust these kind of pullbacks here? And, where do you buy the dip, so to speak, right? So lately, buying the dip has been a little different than usual. So we'll discuss kind of what that looks like. But we're going to start with some backend data here to kind of get things going here. So first and foremost, to kind of preface here with Bitcoin, we are seeing a descending type of channel here that's getting retested, right? So we're seeing this descending channel retest. It's commonly referred to as a bearish backtest. And the likelihood of downside is higher because we're rejecting out that previous support. Or in this case, that wasn't a support. It was more like a resistance at 114,000. So we can presume 114 is the new resistance for us. That was that lower range of liquidation from before. If you can kind of see that here. The amount of liquidation that was swept was a lot. There was tons of money getting destroyed here yesterday and the day before. So when we look at open interest, though, the key takeaway here for us with Bitcoin is that we got a nice little support shelf at 111 and approximately 110. So those are the two areas there where we had previous resistance turn support. And at this point here, if we do end up seeing that 110 range, which is still a probability, we have some open interest there letting us know we got some support there. We've also got about 20 billion in short liquidation delta. This is fairly overextended, and the likelihood of that being recaptured is quite high. Market makers are really good about pushing the price action in the opposite direction to sweep any late shorts. They do the same thing with late longs too, but that's already happened, right? So at this point, we can presume we're going to go up from here. Outside of, with some caveats there. We'll discuss that on the charts. But if you look at liquidation, this is a macro liquidation. Looking back 1 month, you can see there's only liquidation between 108 and 106 left. Everything from a larger perspective has been fully swept here to the downside. So that leads me to believe we're going to see some recovery here because the whales have a lot less incentive to sell the price of Bitcoin instead of pumping it up to try to trap people, right? And that's just kind of what they do. It's just standard trading 101. It's crypto 101 actually, and it's market manipulation, however you call it, but exchanges, unfortunately, are a big part of this too. They're the ones selling off majority of the total amount. By the way, okay, so let's look at CME futures first, kind of give you just some perspective here. We closed here at approximately 113,570, and right now at this point, we're really close, just above that. So truth be told, there's probably not going to be a CME gap on Bitcoin if we close above 113.5 or 113.6, so right in that range. So that's not that big of a gap. The important ones, though, to recognize, and this kind of incentivizes the price to go up higher. It's not a guarantee, of course, but statistical probability is that these always get filled. So you could argue that the lower CME gap for Ethereum could get hit first. So we should see 3,000 again for Ethereum on this downtrend if Bitcoin continues to pull back. Having said that, though, we do have a gap forming right now. 35.30 is that current CME gap. That's where we closed on Friday. And the price of ETH is at 34.60. So a little bit of a run towards that $3,500 resistance range is a distinct probability here. And we'll talk more about the resistance range for Ethereum in a second. And just to kind of quickly note here as well, 168 was a close for CME futures on Solana, and we're right now at about 162. So I'm expecting some relief to happen in the next 24 to 48 hours to the upside based on overextension with liquidation and also CME gaps needing to get filled. Once more, they don't always get filled right away, but they do get filled eventually. It's like it's well over 90% odds that they get filled. There's very few ones that haven't. I think Bitcoin has one down like 106 or like 16,000 or something from a couple years ago. Anyways, conversation for another day. Let's look at Bitcoin and just kind of recognize kind of where we're at here. We'll try to make this quick for you too as well. I know it's a weekend, but we are in a bullish type of flag pattern here. Okay, so it basically just implies the price goes up, works its way down to its 0.618 fib level in most cases, and goes higher, which we saw that here. Now, keep in mind this could work as a resistance range, and if you've watched my channel by any length of time, you'll know that fib levels without confluence mean nothing or very little. They're just numbers that make people feel better. But if we have more moving averages and more confirming factors at those ranges, then it kind of builds a case, right? So here at this point, if we look at the area of open interest, or sorry, correction, the area of confluence with the 20 and the 200 SMA, it's right there at about 115,000. Same thing here as well with our 0.68, 0.65 fib level. That's the golden pocket. That area is going to be working as a resistance here in all reality. So we have an average position on our Bitcoin long at 112,950. So I'm probably going to adjust the take profit target to ensure we walk away in the green on that one, just because there's a lot of resistance above us here. So it's not a guarantee, but the previous low should work as a new high, right? So we're starting to see confluence there, right? Multiple attempts to break this level, moving averages, and our golden pocket. So probably a good chance we continue to go lower from there. So that's half the reason why I'm kind of gearing up for a short position on some other altcoins too, specifically the ones we cover in these videos. So let's talk about that next. What's up with Ethereum here? Well, just because I have some arrows drawn on the chart doesn't mean anything at all, but this is kind of an area of interest for me, that $3,600. If we see that reclaimed, I would love to be able to consider shorting that, because once more, we got our point of control here. We got some unmoving average. We've got a consistent amount of retests there as well as a low that broke to the downside. So instead of that being a support now, it's obviously a resistance. Likelihood of the price going up and then down is pretty high. All right, so let's look at the back-end data for Ethereum and kind of see where we're at, because with Ethereum, this coin has a lot of ETF inflow, at least it did last week, but it's pretty much outflowing now when we looked at that yesterday. So at this point, what we will look at here is we look at support and resistance. That's usually what kind of builds that confluence, right? These aren't just magical, fib levels on the chart, right? What I'm talking about here is we got 3550 and 3650. That upper resistance that was a previous support for us, that's an area of open interest. That means people have the most amount of volume there. So when the price comes back to that level, what are they going to do first? They're going to sell because they've been underwater and they don't like it, right? They see the market going down, they're going to sell. So that causes exit liquidity and the price action to reject off that level. So the distinct probability that we see a bounce off of that range in the opposite direction, of course, to the downside. Liquidation short delta is at 15 billion. You don't want to take a long against this unless you're just taking a long to that CME gap at 3550. Take a look here at the last 1 month's worth of volume. This is pretty straightforward, but pretty much everything's been fully swept, just like Bitcoin. It looks very, very similar, very reminiscent there. All right, now we can look at smaller time frames to kind of give us perspective. Actually, no, this is the last 7 days rather. That is the smaller time frame. Actually, let's look at the monthly now that we say that, because I am kind of curious where we're at here for the macro on Ethereum. See, there's still a lot left here to the downside. We got about 3250 to 3350 is that next chunk of liquidation. These are late longs entering the market, but they're also previous longs that are susceptible to being liquidated here. So Ethereum doesn't look super awesome to me. Now that we've broken that structure there, there's a good chance we go lower. So if we get lucky to see 3600 again, that's my thought process on taking or considering a short trade there. So let's take a look here at Solana next, kind of see where we're at. First things first, back in liquidation for Solana. Just kind of get kind of a baseline here. We can see 152 is that open interest here locally. That's the lower range. That implies we have support there, but there's even more of a concentration at 168. So that is consistent with that CME gap we've already identified. Well, the CME gap's literally at 168. So a good short consideration is 168. That's the previous high, working as a potential new resistance here. Okay. Same thing here as well with liquidation short delta, 3.5 billion. That's actually quite a lot for Solana. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a push up to 168. And then a likely rejection in that range. So once more, either waiting for a short position in that area or taking a long to that level. One of those two things is a decent idea, right? But one of them is not like the other. So just be very careful in how you trade that. Taking a look here, we can see 145 and 155 is areas of liquidation on the downside, still left remaining here from previous. Look at this, isn't it crazy? Roughly 2.5 weeks ago when people were in profit upwards of 200 plus, they still never took profit on their long position at 160. Isn't that crazy? Oh man, the greed is just a very crazy thing to me. Anyways, conversation for another day, but don't forget to secure profits. That's literally how you take profit. No trader has ever been profitable without taking profit. Anyways, just, I know it's redundant. It seems stupid, right? But you'd be surprised. Okay, so take a look here at SUI. Let's quickly note a few things here. I don't have a ton of like support and resistance levels drawn on the chart here, but we can see an obvious area here. The 0.382 fib level was a previous support. Likely the new resistance at about 360. So once more, we've got confluence in that area, in that range. We've got, if we take a look here as well, we can see moving averages hanging out above the price action. Okay, so hypothetically, the price should do something along these lines here moving forward. There's also a ton of liquidation below the price action. I put that on my playout chart earlier. We'll show that to you here in a second, but open interest, there's literally no open interest below the price. Like you have to like stretch it out to see it. There's a small pocket about 323, that's that local bounce, nothing else outside of that. That in combination with liquidation short delta being high and a significant chunk of liquidation down below as low as 280, leads me to believe we're going to see the low $3 range again. Likely going to see a bearish backtest of this horizontal support, previous support rather, turned resistance. It'll probably be this range here, the 360, or could be as low as a local high right there at about 355. So that's going to be the area in which I'm considering a short position. Taking a look here at XRP, what do we want to double check? This here is the back-end data. I'm very curious. Actually, I haven't looked at this in a 24-hour period. Open interest, $2.93 to $3. That's pretty much the obvious area to consider a short. Now, I'm not just leaning towards being a bear permanently, not even close. In fact, I've been really more so on the side of wanting to take long positions. We have a long position open with Litecoin, for example. However, at this point, when we look at 280, we can see a nice little support. That's at previous range. There's a good chance we range between 280 and $3, maybe even a bearish rectangle, and we pull back with Bitcoin. Bitcoin and XRP have been performing consistently in a lot of ways. So with the expectation that Bitcoin is going to probably pull back in the relative near future, I think we're going to see something similar from XRP as well, or at least maintain below $3. I think getting back up over 3, we're going to need a lot of volume to get there. A liquidation short delta is at 1.4 billion. And if we look back this last 1 month, we do have a lot more liquidation down as low as 260. That's a really significant candle there, okay? So I think further downside is probable here. It'd be ridiculous to expect the price just to rally back because you feel emotionally connected to this coin. That is the worst and dumbest thing you could ever do. So no offense to those XRP idiots out there. I'm more so referring to the influencers that make people like me look bad. We're not all the same, okay? And I hope you learned something here today. If you did, why don't you comment below, like and follow if you haven't yet. Consider joining too. We got a Trading Academy community and signals group. Links down below for that. So the 4-hour time frame, to clarify, we are starting to see some confirming factors here that resistance is above us. So almost every single moving average is above the price action. We're under 50 on the RSI, even though MACD is slightly converging on the 4-hour. There's not a convergence you want to take a long into. Now, hypothetically, you take a long to $3, I wouldn't fault you for it. That seems very sensible. In fact, I'm leaning towards a long on Solana to 168. But at this point, you're just going to find a lot more resistance above the price. The downtrend is essentially not your friend right now if you're trying to take a long. So instead of taking a long, why don't you wait for a better short opportunity? Or if you do take a long, I insist that you take a long with low leverage, low position size, and not be a ridiculous emotional idiot, okay? Easier said than done, I totally get it. But at this point here, unless it's okay to buy the dips on your spot bag, but you don't buy dips blindly with leverage. That is so stupid and ridiculous, and it almost makes me upset inside to know that people do that. Anyways, conversation for another day. I love teaching best practice. I hope you found benefit once more. That's pretty much all we got. FYI, I do have all my playout charts available on Twitter, Telegram, and Discord. I plan to record another video here soon covering, what is it, AVAX, ICP, Link, Litecoin, and Crow. Those are all the highly requested coins here locally, and we'll be sure to cover those here soon. So thanks again for being an amazing part of my life. We'll look forward to seeing the next one. Take care of yourself out there. Bye-bye.